Hello, and welcome to the Old Soul Archaeology Podcast. My name is Michelle Janae. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Are you ready to dig deep? Hi, this is Michelle Janae with Old Soul Archaeology, and we're on an Old Soul journey today with Maura McMahon of Mystical Trinity. Hi, Maura.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I just want to kind of let my audience in on who you are. We met in a Facebook group, business-focused, not really mystical or Old Soul related, but I guess I was just drawn to something that you posted, kind of checked you out a little bit and reached out. Maura, for the audience, is a mystic, a clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient. She's got a lot of the clairs going on here. Empath, intuitive, psychic, tarot and oracle card reader, yogi, and artist. That is a big resume in a short period of time.
I know. I'm double Scorpio placement, so I have a super intense personality, and I'm always trying to tone it down a little bit.
So I'm looking at your speaker sheet here, and I think we could probably talk for a while just on everything that you do. So first of all, let me start by asking, how did you come into this more spiritually focused life? Not just the business aspect of it, but just your awareness of your gifts.
My awareness. So, yeah, it's one of those things that I have always had my whole life. I talk to people about this stuff all the time just because I find it fascinating on a personal level. My first near-death experience, I was actually not even born yet. So 6 months in utero, my mom almost miscarried me. And with near-death experiences, they tend to kind of alter us, bring us into alignment a little bit more definitively, I think, with our spiritual side. And I was supposed to have been born on Halloween, and because of my mother's difficult pregnancy, I wasn't born until the 3rd week in November. So I know I had, I was scared, my mom was scared, and then there was this, this huge delay in the birthing process. And so really, I just have always had this very strong spiritual side. I'm a kid who always had crazy dreams, kind of freaked people out. Grew up in the Catholic religion, really freaked them out. But I also have a lot of people in both sides of my family who have a lot of spiritual gifts. So, it was just sort of a process of the dance, right? Like, how much is too much for me to say? And, where do I need to hold back? Where do people get freaked out by when I talk about things? But throughout my whole life, even as a kid, I would always have dreams of, people dying, people being born. I'd have prophetic dreams. The youngest, I have 3 brothers, and the youngest brother in my family was born when we were all teenagers. And I had a dream. It used to be 2 weeks. I'd dream 2 weeks before an event happened. And with my little brother, I had this dream 2 weeks before he was born, and it was the details about how I was going to find out that my mom was giving birth. And, it sort of happens in these, like, segments of time. So do you experience with that a deja vu? So in the moment you realized you dreamed it, or were you aware of all of these things before they actually happened? Like finding out the end of the movie before you watch the movie. That's kind of weird. Yes. Yeah, a lot of weird things. That's my normal. But yeah, I dreamt about like all the details and, how it happened and so and then like with my grandmother, I dreamt about all the details of how my grandmother died and the day and the funeral and that whole thing. And then this one time before my grandmother died, my grandmother's neighbor died, and he died at the same time that his dog died, and I had to dream about that. So I just have always just part of who I am. You know, as I started to get more into understanding this as, you know, as an adult, I actually came to realize that I've always channeled. I just didn't know what it was called.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of us, well, everybody really, right, has a very deep spiritual side. But I think it's a process of understanding what it means, how it shows up, how it comes out, and how we relate to that. Because it's normal, right? Like, we're spiritual beings in a human body. And everybody has spiritual experiences all the time. But we don't necessarily always talk about it because we don't really have the tools or the knowledge or, you know how to go about it. And the further along I've gone in life, I've just gotten more and more comfortable with it and don't really hold back as much as I used to, and just kind of appreciate this sort of odd way that I'm put together. And I found that, you know, as I've gotten more comfortable with it, a lot of people around me have gotten more comfortable with it. And I just seem to sort of attract people, you know, who are kind of sharing this similar spiritual high vibe, which is
like those
fun.
People that are maybe more interested than they let on, or more maybe more aware, but they're still discovering. I think that's important for people that have these types of skills. I mean, I think that it certainly helped me to see that in people. You inspire me.
Oh, thank you.
Speaking about, you know, letting it flow and not holding back, I was watching a few of your YouTube videos, and for our listeners, she's on YouTube, Mystical Trinity.
Yeah.
And you do readings, and I was looking at a reading for my sun sign, Leo, and I looked at just an overall reading for the last week, and I was noticing how fluid your, I guess if you want to call it a download, or the information that you got. You do use tarot and oracle type cards, but I didn't feel like it was scripted. I felt like it was very enlightening. As a Leo, the video resonated with me. I didn't compare that to Libra or Sagittarius or anything else, and I think that there are echoes of wisdom in everything. Yeah. But I think, too, there's some energetic frequencies that will meet us where we are, and whether that's in our astrological sign or our current education, or how much we've opened to the spiritual side. So for you listeners out there, I would check her out. They're amazing videos. She also does personal readings. But let's get into a little bit. I actually want to say we could add precognitive to your resume here.
Well, yeah, I don't want to exhaust people in my descriptions.
Sure.
And so I just try to say spiritual gifts, and it covers a lot. And really, it doesn't really matter, right? Because they're just like words that we use to try to describe these different things. And I think people in their spiritual gifts are always evolving and developing and shifting and changing anyway. So why limit, right, with labels and words? It doesn't really matter.
Well, I was reading, I can't remember in what book. I'm an avid reader and consumer of of information, but I was reading that everything but God is a metaphor. So there isn't really anything that exists that isn't a metaphor for something. God is the only absolute. So the words that we use can be very powerful, and they can be descriptive, and they can help us understand, but at the same time, the danger is that they do box us in, and the term New Age, when you grew up in a Catholic religion like you did and like I did, then becomes something that has its own box from a Catholic interpretation, but someone who is a fan of Louise Hay has a different box. And so depending on where you're coming from, it's like the elephant, right?
Right. And that's why conversations like this are so great, because, you know, it's educating and empowering everyone. And, you know, I think we're in a time where we're dissolving boundaries and barriers. And I've always believed that during this time while we are living on the earth in a human body, that we are limited in what we can communicate, because I feel like there's so much of our spirit that is not like fully embodied in our physical body, and that our just the nature of being human gives us limitations. So I feel like a lot of times we don't even have the words to express a lot of this stuff.
Right. I think that, and then we're limited within those limitations. So even in our bodies, we're not even, whether it's using 7 or 10% of our brain, according to Einstein, or
exactly.
We are so unaware of the potential that we have, even in our bodies, much less outside of our bodies. So I think you're absolutely correct. So you did start to talk about the energies that we're living in, and I know that's something that you wanted to speak to, the current energies within the collective. There's a lot of things going on. We are right smack dab in the middle of the year 2020, which it's proved very interesting for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Different perceptions of how to approach the year. Some people want to get into their bunker and not come out until the year turns, and hopefully find that it's different. But I know people that live like that from day to day too. They call it waking up on the wrong side of the bed, and then maybe tomorrow will be better. So give me a little bit of insight into what you've seen, especially through the readings that you do. I imagine that you're quite in tune with.
Well, I have the YouTube channel and I do weekly readings there, but I also do a daily energy reading that I post on the blog on my website, on Facebook, and on Instagram. And it's actually fascinating for me too to see how the energy shows itself in the readings that I do. Starting probably a year ago, I could really sense the shift and the change that was coming. And I didn't know exactly what it would be. No one really knew exactly what it would be. But the energy that was coming up was just kept talking about this huge shifting and changing that's occurring. And the fact that, we're in the midst of the pandemic right now is really just part of this shift and this change. And, everything is shifting and changing energetically, physically. The polarities on the earth are shifting. A lot of people believe that our DNA is actually shifting and evolving. And so there's so much spiritually, physically, and energetically that's shifting and evolving right now that I think people are being deeply triggered. I think some of that has to do with how people respond to the unknown, right? Because the unknown can be really scary, or the unknown can be an adventure, just depending on how you decide to perceive it, how you decide to manage it for yourself. And there's this big, part of this energetic shift is this big polarity that is happening, this big divide. It's just part of this energetic shift. But really, when I kind of look at the underlying meaning and the underlying energies, it's this choice people have in responding from a place of fear or responding from a place of love. And fear and love are opposite emotions on the spectrum, and the energies of those emotions, the vibrations of those emotions are very different. And so, because there's so much energy that's ungrounded right now, it's swirling around, there's this huge wave of very high vibrational new energies coming in at this time. And there's also this extrication, we're extracting all this toxic energy, all these things that we never talked about, all of this pain, all this trauma within the collective from the last hundreds and thousands of years. That's all the light is getting shown on it. It's getting pulled up for review, for awareness. There's a lot of truths coming out. It's just it's part of this big necessary shift in energy. But because there's so much energy floating around, really whatever people decide to focus on, they'll be able to find a lot of energy that supports that focus.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm always encouraging people when they get in fear mode and anxiety mode and these deep doubts, you're just attracting more of that energy because that's where you're vibrating. And so if you can shift that into love, into playfulness, into joy, even, there's a lot of hard stuff going on right now, and that's difficult. But at the same time, everybody's empowered to make a choice about how they're going to respond to the current energies. And so I think people are waking up to their power in a way that they haven't considered before. And then there are people who are really fighting and resisting and, want to stay in bed all day and don't want to make decisions and are really shut down. And that's just, we're all just humans trying to get through this, right?
Right.
And so at this time, it's just so important for us all to have some compassion for each other because everyone is here having a completely different experience, right? Like, this is the beauty and the curse of being human. Like, we're all here on this earth at this time for a very different purpose. And it's not a time to judge each other. It's a time for everyone to do the best that they can do with the circumstances they're given and trust spirit, right, that things are going to happen just the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, if we can just let things be, which is, I think, the hardest thing for us as humans. And certainly that judgment is we tend to be very judgmental and harsh on ourselves. And
Yep.
Coming from the belief that we are all one,
yeah,
without it, I don't mean to make it sound trite. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the ideas that one might call New Age can sound very trite. They sound, now it's called spiritual bypassing, but it's really outside, I think, of our 3D understanding, because we think of love and we think of, oh, I love my son, or I love my husband, or I love my mom, and that is still not the type of love we're talking about. That's still 3D, earthbound, conditional, generally, at least in the ways we show it. And we see that all the time. Even the parent who tells their kids, I'll always love you, and then something comes up where there's an inheritance and well, sorry, that money got involved and that's no longer the case. So how, in this sense, would you tell someone to do self-care? Because I think self-care, when you do realize that you are part of this bigger one, means that you're caring for the one, which is everybody. So why is self-care so important to you, especially during these turbulent times?
Well, so for me personally, self-care is really important because if I'm not grounded, it's easy to get swept up in the energy. And I was reading about this recently, and it really struck me. So for people that are highly spiritual like myself, I spend a lot of time like in the in-between, kind of in the ethers and energetic bodies, like in dream state. I'm traveling to different dimensions. Like I'm all over the place all the time, energetically. And I think there's, I don't want to say danger, but kind of danger because we need to be like we're having a physical experience. And we're not here to, like, after we leave the body, we have all, eternity to be a spirit, right? Like we're a spirit forever. But the whole point of being a person, being a human, is to be in your body. And so for me, self-care helps anchor me into my body. I started doing hot yoga 15 years ago. I had gotten in this really bad accident. There was a lot that I couldn't do physically, but the heat from the yoga, helped my muscles stretch. I'm naturally flexible, but I have a lot of scar tissue and stuff, so I can't do normal exercises. But I started hot yoga, and with hot yoga, some people think it's crazy, and it's not healthy for everybody, but for me, it loosened up my muscles, and it's a series of 26 poses, and they're always the same. So with my chronic injuries, I know how to gauge the pose. I know what I can do and I can't do, and every day it's different. So it's really like a moving meditation, and it helps you stay in your body and kind of focus on the physical, but at the same time, you're sort of in a meditative state. And so for me, like yoga, meditation, using essential oils is also a really big one that I use because, again, it stimulates a physical sensation for me. It helps me use all my different senses that actually keeps me in my body so that I'm present, right? Because it's so easy for me to float around in all these other places.
So what's your go-to essential oil?
Gosh, my go-to?
I know, that's
it
like,
depends.
How can I go to just one?
Yeah, my absolute favorite scent is lavender because it's just calming and relaxing. These days, some of my other favorite scents are woody scents like cedar, patchouli, things that are grounding, right? Because there's all this spiritual energy right now that can really be overwhelming for me. Like today, every day I wake up, the energy is different. Today, there is something's moving around, things are moving around, and I hear this high pitch, and the energy, it's just like really ungrounded. So it tends to make me feel like, I don't know, it makes me feel weird. But so then, like today, I'm using patchouli, and I'm using wild orange because wild orange is also, it's a very joyful scent. It's a very like alive and vibrant scent. And so I actually, I have like 50 different essential oils and I use them at different times throughout the day, just depending on what I experience. And, it's something that I started using them probably 10 years ago, and they've just been so powerful to, support me in day-to-day living. And they're natural, right? Like they're non-prescription. They can't hurt you. Right. You can't really overdose on them.
You are also an artist. What type of art do you love? And how does that help you in your daily life?
Well, yeah, so I've always been an artist. I've always really been drawn to color. I was the kid in second grade who did Valentine's with all the colors of the rainbow, super intense. I've just always loved color. When I grew up in this little tiny country town, our graduating class in high school, there were like 80 kids. And we had this rep from an art college come to our high school one day, and they talked to us about commercial art. And I was like, oh my God, you can like do this for a living? And nobody ever told me that. So then I was just like all about art school. I don't know, I've always loved drawing and painting. And so then I got a degree in visual communications and have had a career doing graphic design, illustration, website design. I also do oil painting, so I'll do painting commissions. I've done a series of wine labels it used to be Mason Cellars, but then they sold. But they commissioned me to do maybe 5 different paintings that we use the art for the labels on the wine. So Pomelo is one of the wines that's still in stores today. 3 Pears is one of them. They had one called 60 North that was a newer red. They had their signature Sauvignon Blanc, but they sold the company a few years ago, so they may not be selling that anymore. But so I've also always loved technology, and so I've used it as another tool of creativity. I don't think a lot of people who like to combine creativity and technology, but I've just always loved the technology because it's like another tool to express yourself. And so I've always integrated that, creativity and spirituality is just who I am. And being in that creative flow, has really strengthened, I think, also my connection with my higher self, with the divine. I think whenever you do anything creative, you're really in that flow state, whether it's drawing or painting or speaking or writing or cooking or gardening. I mean, dancing, there's so many different creative outlets that people, feel drawn to. that are just...
I think you're right. When I started painting, it's been about eight years now.
Uh-huh.
I would never have thought it would have led me into myself.
Yeah, well, and you use those
outlet, but
yeah, well, and you use those alcohol inks, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and those are gorgeous. Like, the intensity of those colors are incredible.
They're really fun, but what I found was that my art taught me to let go, because with alcohol ink, with any art, you have to let go, but there is so little control, and the painting can change in a matter of seconds, and it looks one way wet, and then when it's dry, it's completely another, and so really you learn to be unattached.
Yeah, well, and really that's the creative process, because when I design websites today, it's the same deal. Like, I have a vision going in, and throughout the process of developing the website, it's going to turn out differently than what my vision was. And so I've learned how to kind of work with that. But it's for people who, I think people are afraid of creativity so often because they don't want to do it wrong, right? Like, it's all the shame and judgment. I'm not going to do it right. I'm going to mess up. People aren't going to get my vision. Whatever it is, there's so much fear people have in creating. And I think I've been doing it for so long, I just had to let go of it. But it puts you in this really vulnerable place, because you, as the creator, like, it's all about your expression. And you have to, like, let go. But I was having this conversation with my son the other day, because he's extremely creative, and it's hard to let go, because it's not going to turn out the way you think it's going to, and there's all this fear. It's so prevalent for creative people. So I talk to people all the time, and they're like, oh, I can't paint, or I can't draw. I'm not creative. I'm like, everybody's creative. You just have to, do what you want to do and have fun with how it turns out. It's about the process, right? Like, in any painting I've ever created, I just had to get to a point where I decided I was done, because I could keep painting on the same painting for probably 20 years. And, never really be done. It's just like the creative process.
Yeah, it's hard as a self-branded holistic creativity coach. I ache for people that say they're not creative, but I've found when I've tried to insist that they are, they shut down more. So I've had to take a more subtle approach.
Yeah, you have to kind of tease it out of them.
Yes. And they have to be ready. I mean, I think, like you said, the creativity and the spiritual life are so intertwined. It's like the double helix of the DNA. I really don't think they can be absolutely separated. They can be put into shadow and denied, and a lot of times in our culture we put both of them into shadow, unfortunately. But
that's true.
I think you can pursue something spiritual and stay in your logical, rational brain and still have it be in shadow, and you can deny the creative part of you at the same time. Or you could be like this artist who has no regard for anything spiritual and everything's still rational. I get an idea in my mind, even though it's an unfair judgment, of cubism, maybe because I'm thinking of being in boxes, right? And I'm sure that cubism in its own way is also very spiritual, but because it made me think of boxes. I'm also very visual, so that's kind of where my brain went.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, though. It's true. I mean, for all of this stuff, there's such a range, right?
Right.
And one of the things I love about art and creativity is that there's no right and there's no wrong. So it removes the judgment, right? Or it has the potential to remove the judgment. But that's one of the things that I've always loved. Like, I went to Catholic school, right? And they're very judgmental, and everything's black and white, and you do it this way and not this way, and that's how it has to be.
Right.
But with art, like, really, with a good art teacher, they'll tell you pretty much anything is okay, right? Because art is just its creative expression, and that's going to happen differently for anybody, which is, I think, so beautiful. And that's really, like, you could have 20 people draw the same tree, and everyone's going to do it differently.
Right.
That's where the magic comes in. Like, that's divine magic.
Just
because
like
everyone,
will sprout into a different looking tree. It will paint itself on the world differently.
Exactly. Every soul, even though we're one, everyone has an expression that's uniquely their own.
Isn't that beautiful? I mean, I can't wait for the day when the majority of us realize that and are able to, first and foremost, see that we are that we are that beautiful and we are that beautiful expression, but at the same time, so is everyone else.
Yeah.
I had a visualization this morning of the veil, and it was kind of like when a bride gets married, she's wearing a veil, and behind this veil is this beautiful sacred woman that is going into sacred union, right?
Yeah.
And so what my guides were telling me was to remove my own veil, to remove the veil that I have over all of my qualities that behind the veil are perfectly fine, but because of the veil I can't see it and I deny it. And so the visualization was telling me to remove the veil and be married to yourself in all of your splendor and beauty, and it was pretty powerful.
That is. Well, and that's coming into balance with your own inner divine masculine and divine feminine.
Right.
And what we have to remember through this process is most of us, probably, 98% of people were raised with very judgmental parents and systems. And so we've gone through all of these years and really all of these generations where there was so much judgment and shame and restriction and, right and wrong, that it's a process of dissolving the things that are not serving us, that are not helpful, that are not supportive, that are not nurturing, and it takes time to unravel and heal all of these layers of wounding and trauma and toxicity through all the generations. I mean, that's what we're all working through right now.
Right. Well, that really drives home that beautiful quote. I think it was Gandhi, maybe, that said, "Be the change you want to see in the world."
Yes, that's one of my favorites.
When we are products of this judgment and this maybe lack of unconditional love, if we are that change, then we start with ourselves. So we remove judgment from ourselves. We start loving ourselves. The self-care comes into play. And certainly without an acceptance of we are one, it can go awry. But I think that's what opens the door to that realization as well, is to be able to see that in yourself. Then you stop projecting, right? Or you project the positive. And,
it's true, though. When you get to that place where it's okay for you to know that you're the most important person for you to take care of, that's a big deal.
It really is.
Really big deal. And, like so many of us, I had my kids and the husband worked and I took care of the kids. I had no time to take care of myself. So, it wasn't until my kids were young adults that I actually had the time and the space to be able to take care of myself. And what a wonderful thing. But going forward, what if we can do it differently? Right?
Oh, exactly.
Like, what if everyone is given the time and space and support they need to take really good care of themselves? Because then it's, it's about the ripple effect, right?
Exactly. I've found that it's what we model. What's modeled for us has to change, and then it's what we model. So perhaps we as young mothers did have the time to take care of ourselves, but because of the societal norms, we thought we didn't. We thought all of the other stuff had to be done first. The floors swept,
That's right.
The mirrors cleaned, the bathroom spotless, ready for company at a moment's notice, even though, maybe they came over, maybe they didn't.
Right.
But with my daughters, I have learned that I need to be the model. I need to be the model, even when it means that they might feel that mom is just a little bit distant. And then I just explain to them, mom's taking some time for herself, and you'll find that you need that time for yourself as well. And they'll get it.
They will. They absolutely do, because they absorb, whatever it is that they're experiencing. They might not have the words, but they do absorb the experience and really retain it.
Absolutely. So I want to go back a little bit. Let's go back into the spiritual side of things. And I want to talk about your animal totems. How did you find out, now you've mentioned in your bio here, that your animal totems are the snake, meaning transformation, and the eagle, clairvision. How did you come across your totems? Was it something you chose? Did they choose you?
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to explain it. It wasn't like one day I woke up and was like, yep, the eagle's my totem and the snake's my other totem. Didn't work like that at all. Probably a lifetime of experiencing these animals, uncovering different meanings through different experiences, exploring different belief systems. Really just it's a process.
They chose you, you chose them. It was mutual.
It's a reciprocity. You know, like lots of times if I leave the house, I see an eagle. Don't know why. And it happens I'll be driving down a city street, an eagle will swoop through my line of vision and back up into the air. Like I always see eagles. They've always been present for me. And I just, you know, I don't know why, but I resonate with a lot of animals, but eagles in particular, they're so strong, they're so wise, you know, they're powerful. They have this clear vision that's really spiritual because they, you know, they're so strong when they fly so high in the sky that they just have this deep spirituality. And with snakes, you know, they're the opposite, right? Like they're very of the earth. They're very, you know, people can view in the earlier belief systems, people view them as a symbol of deception. In the more ancient belief systems, they're viewed as a symbol of transformation. And so for me, like as a Scorpio, I go through constant processes of rebirthing myself. And to me, it's very much like a snake. I'll go through a period of time. I shed my skin. I'm leveling up. I'm taking off another layer. I'm evolving into a deeper level of being me. So it's just the resonance of the symbolism for me personally. And I understand that some people view snakes as deceptive, but that doesn't bother me. It's my deal, and everyone, you know, I honor for where anyone is with their belief system and their journey. But for me, it's the opposing forces, but yet deeply spiritual and significant forces for me as well.
That's beautiful. I mean, every animal has its, like any archetype has its shadow side as well. So
right.
I love the symbol of the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. That one to me is just this eternal symbol of transformation, and definitely resonates with me as well.
Yeah, that's a really cool image.
So we're going to start to wrap things up, but I had asked you in pre-interview conversations, who inspires you? And you said everyone, but you also talked about your favorite authors. So let's talk a little bit about where you receive your inspiration. You had mentioned J.K. Rowling. Let's talk a little bit about that.
I love her. You know, she was a single mom. She was very challenged financially. She just went through all of this challenge and hard times until finally, you know, she got a lucky break with this book series. And the whole series, I've read all of those books 2 or 3 times. I've watched all the movies, and they're so magical, and they came to be in a time that people really needed it. So it appeals to all age groups. It appeals to that fun and magic and possibility that I think we have within us, that we are limited by in the physical experience. And so, yeah, they were kind of meant for kids, but it goes so much deeper than that, too. You know, all the underlying messages, the magic. I love the series. I love her. She's incredible. You know,
she's definitely an example of persistence and magic herself, I would say.
Magic, talent, she's amazing. She's incredible.
So do you have a favorite quote that you could name off the top of your head by Rumi?
I do. It says, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." I love that. Probably because I'm a water sign too. But I love the depth of that. With just a few words, there's such deep meaning.
Well, there is something to the power of the ocean as a metaphor for the one, as opposed to the earth, which has its boundary lines and its fences and all of those things, which, you know, we kind of put the ocean into its boundaries and we name them, but we don't really think about it in the same way. You can't really put up a fence in the ocean. And
well, and we haven't explored all the depths of the ocean.
Right.
It goes deeper.
Yeah, and we are that. So
yeah.
How much of ourselves continues to go unexplored, but what an adventure.
Right, because it's there.
Well, I want to let all of our listeners know that you can find Mystical Trinity on Facebook and Instagram as Mystical Trinity 333. Think of Trinity as in 3. And on YouTube as Mystical Trinity. Is there anything I missed?
Also, my website is mysticaltrinity.com.
Thank you. Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, so thank you. What a wonderful interview today.
For you all to go check her out. She's very down to earth, but also very uplifting. So we have both sides of that there. And a beautiful soul. I want to thank you for being on the show today, and I look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You have been listening to Old Soul Archaeology with Michelle Janae. Don't forget to check out www.oldsoularchaeology.com to sign up for my newsletter, read my latest blog post, check out my courses and products, and more. Thank you for your support. Have a great day, and dig deep. See you next time.